Well, if everything is working correctly, I am currently live and I should have some video and some sound coming through. I'm going to do my sound check like I normally do. And once I know everything's working, then we'll go from there. Of course, there's always the necessity for me to watch the ads. And the ads are finished. Thank God for that. All right, we'll get rid of that. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with my live streams, and this is sort of the first time for you, I will include the start time for this video down in the description for those of you who want to get past all of the rambling at the beginning and the setup and making sure people get a chance to get into the room and all that sort of stuff. There will be a start time down in the description later on when YouTube publishes it and I get a chance to get at it. Okay, now if you aren't subscribed and you haven't hit the bell button and you haven't turned on your notifications and you want to access the live stream later on, that's a problem because all of my live streams are unlisted, which means you can't get at them unless you actually do those sorts of things. Okay, so make sure you do those sorts of things so you can get access to the live stream. If you don't care about the live streams and you just want the edited down, cut down version where I get rid of all of the community, their feedback, their questions at the end of the live stream, don't worry about it because in about 3 or 4 days it comes out and you'll be able to watch it then. Okay. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with my live streams, normally with my live streams, the process is I go through my notes, I read from my notes, I have everything prepared so I don't have to sort of think about things as I go. I will be using slides and images as I present this. This is a follow-up video from the video on the best cantrips in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, which I want to say quite clearly that a list of the best cantrips in Dungeons & Dragons 5e is a sort of a nonsense video because it really isn't applicable to all of the classes. This is where we start looking at specific classes and can actually start making some decent opinions on how useful it will be to you because some cantrips you can't use in the class you have selected. So we're going to be very specific today. We're going to deal with the wizard. All right, so grab a drink, some food, you settle down, get comfortable. We're going to get ourselves all lined up and we're going to talk about the wizard in a second. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. The topic for today, as it happens, is something that players and dungeon masters might find very useful, and that is the best wizard cantrips in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. What are they? Well, let's make it clear. This is a video that, like any other video, is just my opinion and don't need to take everything literal. Just remember, it's an opinion. First off, wizards start with 3 cantrips and eventually we'll get a total of 5 cantrips to cast, which means there's a limit to what you can do, but you get quite a few cantrips for a wizard, which is great. With a wizard, I would recommend using one of 2 methods for selecting cantrips, because wizards get a lot of cantrips. For a casting class, other than the sorcerer, they get a lot of different cantrips they can select from, and they get a lot of cantrips they can actually cast during their adventuring day, which is great. So the first method is select 1 damage dealing cantrip and the rest of your cantrips be utility. This is for somebody who pretty much isn't too worried about using cantrips in combat. Method 2 is select 2 damage dealing cantrips and the rest of them will be utility based cantrips. So 2 damage dealing cantrips and the rest of them will be utility. Now with the 2 damage dealing cantrips method, you need to pick 2 different damage types. Don't select the same damage type, that's not recommended. And then also make sure that one of those cantrips is a saving throw and the other cantrip is an attack roll. This will deal with issues with regard to armor class and just having to cast a spell up close in melee, which may unfortunately happen given the right circumstances. I don't recommend selecting all damage dealing cantrips. Now, you could do that, but I wouldn't do it because you have no utility function whatsoever if you run out of spell slots. Now, you shouldn't necessarily be running out of spell slots at higher levels, but at low level, it's certainly likely to happen. And remember, there are 3 pillars of play, and that is, you've got your exploration, your social interaction, and you've also got your combat. It's not all about combat. I would suggest taking the following cantrips in this order of priority, although some variation would make an awful lot of sense depending on your style of play, because not all cantrips are going to be useful to all types of players. If you don't know how to use a particular type of cantrip, then don't select it. So the first on my list is Minor Illusion, because it creates a simple sound or image that allows you to basically live up to your fantasy of being a deceptive Loki. It has a wide range of options, and I would recommend checking out Trent Monk's guide on how to use Minor Illusion if you don't believe me. I have also talked about Minor Illusion in another video that I did on the best cantrips in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, where I do talk about those issues if you want to know. Okay, number 2 on my list is going to be Mage Hand, because you can manipulate an object or objects and the environment 30 feet away without becoming paste on the wall, or basically getting killed or hurt or damaged. It is better than the 10-foot pole, and you know how I feel about the 10-foot pole. I still think it has a place in Dungeons & Dragons 5e and other versions of Dungeons & Dragons. So Mage Hand, very useful, simple to use too. Okay, number 3 is the Firebolt, because it has a long range of 120 feet and it ignites objects, so you can target an object and ignite it and make it catch on fire. It burns monsters for 1d10 fire damage when you first get it, and it scales up, which is excellent. And fire solves most problems provided the thing isn't resistant to fire. What I've found with damage dealing cantrips, when you need to use them, range often makes the big difference. And if you have too short a distance, you can't actually do anything with it, and you have to resort to using something like a bow. Okay, and we don't really want to be using a bow if we can help it. Okay, next on our list would be number 4, and that's Prestidigitation, because it creates a, well, let's just say many minor magical tricks can be used with this to solve problems and essentially annoy the other players at the table, including your dungeon master, which I know sounds terrible, but that's often how it's used. It is essentially the Swiss Army knife of Dungeons & Dragons, and it's a really good spell. Now, I know a few people will be saying, Fred, Prestidigitation should have been the very first cantrip I selected, not Minor Illusion. But I would still suggest to you that Minor Illusion is far more useful to you than this spell at that particular stage. But you can disagree with me, that's fine. Okay, number 5. I find it hard to say number 5, but number 5, I have to admit, has to be Message, because limited telepathy is better than none. And essentially that seems to be what it's doing, okay? It's not true telepathy, but it certainly has that element to it. Communication between, or basically communication without creating noise, keeps you hidden from monsters. So you don't have to keep making that stealth check and sneaking back and forth. If you have the scout moving forward and having to go back to the main group and communicate, that can be a problem. And also too, if you have a wily dungeon master, they are going to be keeping an eye on how you conduct your conversations at the table between your player characters. So I would still say Message. These are going to pretty much cover the entire spectrum of play that you might need at your table. And that's just with a cantrip. Okay, there are alternatives that are very good and you should certainly consider, provided that you know what you're doing with them. And I would say the first one I would talk about is Mending. You could substitute one of the ones I've talked about for Mending, because how many spells can repair most mundane objects or items and also magic items? That's what Mending can do. It doesn't imbue a magic item with magic attributes, but if it's broken, you can repair it provided the damage is not too great. And often you will find that a lot of mundane objects can be still repaired with this spell. So that's why I put it on my list. Okay, number 2 in terms of alternatives would be Chill Touch, because it has a range of 120 feet, and as I said, range is very important with Cantrip, particularly if you're playing in a wilderness exploration type campaign. And it does 1d8 necrotic damage, and that's good enough in itself. Just having that is good enough. But it also is specialized for dealing with undead monsters. That's like a gift, really. That's extra. That's icing on top of the cake. And the last alternative spell that I would suggest having a look at, and that is Poison Spray. Poison Spray, because it does 1d12 poison damage. That's a lot of damage for a cantrip. It scales up like all the damage dealing cantrips do. It has a range of 10 foot, which isn't great, but it can be cast in melee, right up close when you're in close combat, without any kind of penalty, because it's a saving throw. And that is a huge benefit to anybody who is casting spells when things sort of fall apart and the truck just does no more wheels left to sort of hold it up. Okay, all right, next. If you can use spells from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, then that changes things again. Okay, although I talked about the alternatives a second ago, those are for the player's handbook. But if you can use Xanathar's Guide to Everything, then there are 2 spells I would seriously suggest having a good look at. And the first one on my list is Toll the Dead. I never really understood what was going on with Toll the Dead until I saw it in play and realized what was going on. Why do we want to take Toll the Dead? Because it has a damage output of 1d12 necrotic damage at 60 feet to injured monsters. Now, if they're not injured, it's only going to be 1d8. So you're only going to target the monsters that have already been injured or lost hit points. That's the thing you're aiming for. It should never be passed up. Go for this. This is a great cantrip. It does a lot. And necrotic damage is usually pretty good in terms of a damage output for any kind of cantrip. Anyway, the last one makes me laugh more than a few times, and that has definitely got to be Shape Water. Because being able to control water has too many ways you can abuse it in your game of Dungeons and Dragons. I would say Shape Water I would certainly consider on par with Minor Illusion and Prestidigitation. Those are great spells. Shape Water, usually you have water almost anywhere. If you have a water-based or water-themed campaign, even more useful to you. But I would certainly not get this. Don't just pass it over. It's seriously cool. You can get your Sub-Zero fix from this cantrip and this spell. So go with it. And look, honestly, the utility function behind it and the way you could use it in combat is quite significant. And I don't mean damage dealing. Okay, so that is my top list of cantrips for a wizard in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Now I've given you 5 because usually you only get 5, so I've given you the top 5 that I would go for. Some alternatives if some of the cantrips that I've talked about are either cantrips you're not quite familiar with or you don't like, and I've given you some additional alternatives if your Dungeon Master is allowing you to use Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Now if you found this video helpful, great. I have like truckloads of videos on how to use spells. I even have a video on the best cantrips in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I don't know how useful that will be to you, but you're welcome to go and check it out. If that's not the sort of thing for you, I have lots and lots of videos for players and Dungeon Masters providing advice on Dungeons & Dragons and Dungeons & Dragons 5e specifically. If you want to support this channel so I keep making content like this, you can do that through my Patreon page, where you can get access to the written scripts for all of my videos and the live streams, so you don't have to be notified, subscribed, and hitting the bell button, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Otherwise, I have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon. You can also support me through the merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos if you want to buy some merch, or just watch my videos. I get paid through the AdSense revenue. It's a little bit of cash, so that's always nice as well. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, I publish videos quite a lot. Until next time, keep rolling those 20s. Alright, let's get to the chat. Maybe not quite as dense a video today as a lot of people might have been looking for. I do apologise, but I have to go and sort out my car, otherwise it may not start anymore. So I'm going to, seriously, I'm going to have to go and get that sorted out pretty quickly. So I'm going to go through the chat fairly quickly. I will give you sort of a heads up as to what I'm doing in terms of the future, as of what am I doing for next week, or what's going to be showing up maybe tomorrow. I kind of got a surprise for tomorrow. Anyway, let's see if my eyes are any good or whether glasses are going to work better. No, that's not working. Okay. Alright, so if you have questions about this particular topic, type them into the comment section or the chat right now, really quickly, before I disappear. Otherwise, if you want advice or want to provide feedback, or you have questions about Dungeons and Dragons in general for Dungeon Masters or players, this is the time to do it right now, okay? I always will comment or respond to your comments in the live chat during a live stream, because I figure you're obviously the dedicated people who want to show up and check out a live stream, okay? All right, Sly Variant. Hello, Sly Variant. Overboard DM is here. Hi, Joe. Look, for those of you who don't know anything about Overboard DM, he does videos on miniatures and terrain, high-end stuff, and other sort of Dungeons and Dragons accessories. I recommend checking out his channel. It's worth having a look. He's doing a lot of things that other people aren't doing. Okay, Matt's got here. So Mage Hand. Yes, of course, Mage Hand. A General Nerd. Hype. I'm glad you're hyped. Alright, so, and thank you for the comment there, A General Nerd. I do appreciate it. I'm glad that you're finding the content informative and entertaining. Alright, so what do we got here? Sound check is good. Well, I already know that. I did spot your comment, by the way. I just didn't have time to go over it. Hi, John. How's it going? Yeah, it's a dicker of a name, isn't it? Prestidigitation. Oh, prestidigitation. One of those. Hi, Nicholas. My favourite warrior cantrip is sword. Yeah, fair enough. It makes sense. It never runs out. It's always there. Dear. Yeah, John, you did call it. Well done. What do you got here? What's this, Joe? Good cantrip video, Fred. Thank you, Joe. I was looking at the feedback in terms of what sort of cantrips a wizard should pick up, and I was thinking, okay, if I was playing a wizard and based on all the experience that I've had so far, what are the cantrips that I would select now? And those are the ones that sort of stood out for me. Although Toll the Dead and Shape Water really do appeal to me, and I still love mending. I don't gravitate quite so much towards Chill Touch and a sort of poison spray. I guess because I've found that the secondary effect of a cantrip never seems to be quite as useful to me as having that long range. And being able to set things on fire, as I've said, I always found to be pretty much solve a lot of problems and create a lot of havoc as well. And that's kind of the sort of way I play when I am a character, when I am playing the game and not dungeon mastering, or playing as a character, should I say, because dungeon mastering is still playing. Okay, the Carter videos, how's it going, man? Yes, you did finally make it. What's this? Hats for me. Right, I feel like we have... Now, I know somebody was going to say something about Mold Earth. Would you say Mold Earth is as good as Shape Water? Okay, so the reason I don't think that Mold Earth is quite as good as Shape Water is because your ability to excavate earth with Mold Earth, it has to be loose earth. So you can't excavate stone or rock, which is what usually a dungeon is made out of. You can excavate sort of the loose gravel and so forth that's around you if you're in a cave. That makes a lot of sense. But what really sells me with shape water, and I will actually pull that up right now so you can see it, and hopefully it makes it clear what I'm getting at when I talk about shape water. Here's the text for it. Not that I can read it on the screen because it's tiny and so forth, but I'll grab my book and I'll read from that. And the entry, there's one line, one sentence that makes it stand out for me, okay? And that is the ability to freeze the water. That's great. I like the idea that you can freeze the water. You can't have a creature standing on it, fair enough. You freeze it for an hour, which is great, that's awesome. But what really stands out for me in this spell is that section where it says, you cause the water to form into simple shapes and animate at your direction. This change lasts for 1 hour. That there in itself has the ability to be exploited in combat, out of combat, for deception, distraction, intimidation, and persuasion. That's what really sells it for me with regard to shape water. And I would say, frankly, that I even feel like it's probably even more powerful than something like minor illusion or prestidigitation, simply because of that. Now, when we say, you can shape water, the area that you can affect is only still 5 foot. But 5 foot is bigger than a small trinket-sized item like prestidigitation. It's still the same area and space, a 5 foot cube is still essentially the same space as minor illusion. That's why I really like shape water in particular. All right, Epic Donut 1109. Hopefully that answered your question. Hey Fred, what do you think of the cantrip from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount and the book as a whole? Okay, I know I know I should have done videos on a lot of the new books that have come out, and people have been waiting for me to do reviews on them. My life is a lot more complicated than it has been in the past, so I'm going to answer your question. Okay, I can't show you. I would normally talk about something and show you what I'm talking about. But what I'm going to do instead is I will briefly tell you what I think is good or bad about this book. So first off, The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount is enormous. The amount of content in there is massive. Does it feel like it is somebody's homebrew campaign guide? It certainly does. Is there anything that really stands out and makes it feel like it's fantastical? For me, it doesn't, but it has a lot of things tied into the book that make it stand out. One, because it's really well laid out. Not only is it laid out, it has an index, not just a contents page, but an index. Something that, sadly, Wizards of the Coast doesn't seem to do. I think, in this case, Matthew Mercer understood that people need to have an index. So that's fantastic. With regard to the new book, The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, not only does it have adventures in it, it has 4 different adventures in it, and they're actually all fairly different in their nature. In terms of the cantrips and the spells in the book, I did not look at them closely. Now, why did I not do that? Why didn't I talk about, say, cantrips from some of the other supplements, or spells from some of the other supplements? I tended to limit what I was doing here because I feel like the cantrips in the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount is for a different world, and I would probably steer away from giving you advice on cantrips that your dungeon master may not allow you to use in that campaign unless it is a Wildmount based campaign. So I didn't talk about those. I haven't looked at that cantrip in a lot of detail, or that you're talking about. In terms of the book as a whole, The monsters, when I looked at the monsters, I felt like the monsters were variants of existing monsters. That's not to say they aren't good monsters, but they still look like variant monsters. Is that a bad thing? Well, most of the books that we have coming out with supplements that are coming out with monsters in them are unfortunately tend to be variants on existing monsters. There is sometimes scattered amongst there a selection, a very small selection of unique monsters that we haven't seen in the original monster manual. Okay, so I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they're just doing what Matt Mercer is using, which makes perfect sense. With regard to some of the player options, the type of magic and the classes in there aren't necessarily things that I would use in my game or allow in my game. That doesn't mean that they aren't good. I just think that they are specific for that campaign. What I like is the way he's talked about a lot of the aspects in terms of magic items. Specifically magic items that level up with the character as the character levels up. I've talked about this sort of topic before, where, rather than players chasing the +1 sword and then after a certain period deciding they should have a +2 sword, you simply allocate a magic item to them rather than have them try to farm magic items out of your world or keep tossing things away or selling them off or disposing of them into a box where they just sort of sit and collect dust, that you have magic items that advance and grow with the character. That's, I think that's really smart thinking. Matt Mercer had the right idea. Some of the magic items in there are very much artifacts, so they're really powerful. So, yeah, I do have the book. I do think it's a very good book. Do I think that you should buy it? It's hard to say. I feel like a lot of people have given this book a hard time. If I had a choice between The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount and yet another, The Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, I would have gone for The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, personally. Yet there's far more sort of crazy stuff going on in Ravnica. The new book that's being released for Magic the Gathering, and it's supposed to be a Magic the Gathering world or theme behind it, that's being released very shortly. I think it's in June. Sounds great. It's Magic the Gathering. I don't have an issue with Magic the Gathering. I use a lot of their art, okay? But I still think it's a very, very well put together book. And I can't really say if it's the book for you unless I would actually show it to you. You know how I do my reviews. I don't just usually talk about it. I show you and flip through the book as I go so you can actually see what I'm talking about, and then you know what you're buying, okay? I think I've said enough about that for now. Okay, all right. Questions. Dear. Slow variant. What's this? You're going prestidigit. Look, let's not even get into the pronunciation of a pretend word. Okay? Let's not even get into that. Between my New Zealand English, the UK's Oxford English, which they would classify as correct English, and the modified Northern American English, nothing is going to sound the same, okay? All right, what do you got here, Carter Videos? The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount is good. Donut, I have it. All right, so you've got one other person who said good things about it. Is 2 people enough? Or do you want to wait and just see when I release the video? It'll come eventually. Hats for me. Well, never realised Shapewater had so much potential. Thank you for your answer. You're welcome. Yeah, I will do, so for those of you who are wondering what's going on, I will do a guide on how to use Minor Illusion and I will make a guide on how to use Mage Hand, which means I will probably do a guide on how to use prestidigitation. I'll probably do a video on how to use shape water and mold earth, because they do require quite a bit of knowledge and experience. And some of that I can certainly present to you. Some of it will take me a little bit of time because it will require a bit of research, and I will have to talk to other people, because I haven't seen shape water and mold earth in action at the table that often. And like minor illusion is very dependent on a player's creativity and the dungeon master buying in to what they're trying to do. Okay. Okay, I think I've answered that. We got that part done. Gonzo the Great. Gonzo, is that you? Gonzo the Great. I like it. Now, am I wrong? Would that be Gonzo from Dungeon Class? Because if that's Gonzo from Dungeon Class, you guys need to go and watch Dungeon Class. Okay? You need to watch their stuff. They have some really good messages. And I'm glad that I've started watching some of their videos, because they're well thought out. Ah, we have Dungeon Class here. Yes, it was me. Aha! I saw the little icon there and I was thinking, is that Gonzo or... Yeah, it's got to be Gonzo. I'm pretty sure it's Gonzo. All right. I'm sure Mark will maybe around. Who knows? Suspect that it would probably be quite late where you are right now. Okay, Epic Donut 1109. Thanks for the input, Fred. Hope you are happy and well. I'm doing all right. I'm not happy my car isn't starting that easily, so I better go and sort that out before I can't start it anymore. So I've got to go and get the remote sorted out. Okay, what else I've got here? Last couple of things. Sly variant. Oh, I was just making a joke. No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. I know what you're getting about. Yeah. So not gonna. It's not a big deal. Try using mending on it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Try use mending on it. Dear. Okay. All right. So in terms of what I'm likely to do in the future, like next week. Next week, I'm probably going to do a video on Curse of Strahd. That's a Dungeon Master Guide on the Curse of Strahd. What would be the topic? Frankly, I want to talk about shops that don't exist. That was really the message I wanted to get across. So it would be a Dungeon Master Guide on the Curse of Strahd. If it's not that, then it's definitely going to be a video around something like the sellsword, sidekicks, or hirelings. I'm not convinced that that topic is ready. I would encourage people who have seen the community page, the community poll on hirelings, sellswords, and the sidekick to give feedback. I've tried really hard to respond to everybody's comments, provided that you're civil and you've got a good sort of rationale going on there. Everybody's going to have a different rationale. I would like to make it clear that if I do make a video on hirelings, sellswords, and sidekicks, I'm not going to tell you you should do it. And I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't do it. That's not that video, okay? The video will have a very different nature. If somebody else wants to make that type of video, they can, but that's not me. What do you got here, Gonzo? Still rewarding you can trip video. Really good stuff. Rewatching You Can Trip. Oh, I can't even remember what that was. There are too many videos now. I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. I guess it would be wonderful if at some point you saw some videos with me and some other YouTubers talking about stuff. That might happen. it's possible, isn't it, Gonzo? That might happen in the future on somebody else's channel and my channel. You might see in the future. I don't know how far away that is, but you might see a combination. Oh, Cantrip. The Cantrip video. Right, I got it. Yep. Yeah. The worst Cantrip video certainly generated a lot of comments, and it certainly helped me fill in a lot of the gaps that I needed to with other stuff. Yeah. So that's it. I think we're done. We're covered for today. That means I can zip off. I do apologise that it has been very quick. Yes, it is possible. Laugh out loud. So Dungeon Class is saying that it might be possible that there might be a combination between those two channels talking about stuff. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna say goodbye, and wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter whether it's the morning, the night, the afternoon, the early morning. Look after yourself, look after your family and your friends and your neighbours. Just keep your distance, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.